When Kabir Singh came out, a lot of us were infuriated that, toxic masculinity is being reinforced and glorified. And if you want to show it, but don't like make it so heroic. There are a lot of Kabir Singhs. We have known them on a personal level. We've seen our friends date them, and we've seen people who have sons who turn out to be like Kabir Singh. But again, the thing is that if we glorify those things, we're not questioning the faults in that character. We're not questioning how that character became who he became.
Pour the Heart Out. Episode 10, What Not to Learn About Love from Bollywood.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of Pour the Heart Out. This is our final episode for this season, and today we're talking about something different, but not so different. We're talking about how Bollywood affects our idea of love, how Bollywood affects what we understand by relationship, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a little different from what we've been discussing so far, but the idea is that from our discussions all along, we've understood how much things around us affect what we perceive as love, how our self-respect is affected by them, and a lot of those things. So Praneeth, hi. So I'm going to probably direct this to you and understand from you that why do you think a discussion on how movies, how pop culture in general affects our idea of love, and why are we doing this today?
Right. Um, so you see, in all our previous 9 episodes, we've spoken about the internal fight, the internal conflict, how we're brought up since childhood, how our bringing up affects the way we look at love and relationships, and how we work in our relationships. And today we're talking about a different aspect, which is another contributing factor in defining love for us in our life. Um, I in no way think that cinema has more power than our caregivers do in shaping how we look at love or relationships or act in them. However, I do think that cinema sort of maintains the conditioning that you have in your childhood. So either maintains it or it challenges it. And I think that cinema, that is movies, series, songs, they have the power to challenge our perceptions, challenge the way we're living, we're looking at love, relationships, our males and female counterparts, and how we approach each other, how we emote to each other, how we communicate to each other. I think it has a lot of power to influence that part of our life. And why is that? Well, because cinema has catered to something that works very well with the way our brain is wired, which is through imagery. We know that we think through imagery. We know that visual aids work the best for human mind, and that is what cinema caters to, right? And of course, stating the obvious, it is there for entertainment. But I was listening to Javed Akhtar the other day, and he said that, of course, cinema is there for entertainment, but so is circus. Cinema is different from circus. Cinema has more to offer. It is also about art, and art is definitely has a lot more to do. Uh, it touches your life in all these different capacities, and it is to do with a lot more than just entertainment. And I think that is why it was very important to talk about how, because we are consuming so much content from from media, right? There is movies, there is series, there's these TV shows that we watch, and we're constantly engaging ourselves in this content. And one thing that this content does is that it enables conversations. And we know that we in all our episodes we've really talked about having conversations, and how when we talk about something, when we discuss a particular concept, there is a scope for change, there is a scope for progress, there is a scope for introspection and seeing what's working and what is not working. And that is one thing that cinema enables, and that too on such a massive level, right? Masses are consuming these movies, and we talk in the Bollywood language, right? We express love to each other in that language. So here's what's happening. We've been conditioned. We've seen our parents speak to each other, connect with each other in a particular light, and that has influenced how we're going to do that in our life. But we're using cinema, media, Bollywood, all of these things as our ways, and we're learning how we're going to express what we've learned, right? Now, while we're picking up how to express it, this also offers us an opportunity to question, but do we want to continue to go in the same light, in the same direction? And this content, I mean, look at what's happening today. The world is changing rapidly today, even the self-help industry. There are so many Instagram therapists today. We could have never imagined that a therapist is going to walk out of a clinic setup and is going to come out there and be so vulnerable on social media, right? That is what media is doing. um, I remember I was still under training when the movie uh, Dear Zindagi came out. And I remember my seniors telling me that, uh, queries for counseling sessions poured in, and so many people suddenly wanted to seek help. It was really revolutionary. Why? Because never before in Bollywood, a movie was made around the subject of mental health and seeking help. Even though it wasn't the best portrayal of what really goes on in a therapy room, it still encouraged people to look at that aspect of their life, have more conversations around that. So people were talking to each other a lot more than they did before that. And so many movies have been revolutionary in that aspect, right? When Tare Zameen Par came, I don't think that India ever invested in special ed before that. We never focused on learning disabilities in children before that. We never focused on how the education system is taking such a massive toll on children's mental health before that. So what is happening is there are those ideas in our head. There are all kinds of people in the society, but what Bollywood is doing is that because it caters to masses, it is enabling conversation, and it is encouraging us to look at these particular aspects. Now, if we are on autopilot, we're going to go watch these movies also on autopilot, and we'll just come back consuming what we've seen, right? So, what we want to do today through this episode is come down from the autopilot and challenge some of the things that we've learned from Bollywood, some of the ideas around love and relationships that we've picked up, and probably through this episode, learn the art of questioning what you consume, online or through cinema, and having that filter that do I want to let this go in without, going through that filter that does this even make sense? I mean, it's sure glorified in the movie, and it's sure a very romantic idea, but how healthy is it? So also having that barometer to check it and then see if that's what we want to consume. So um, I mean, we can call it like a mindful session and a mindful lens towards Bollywood, if you will.
Right, I think love that. Just turning off that autopilot via cinema and questioning is a key word here that I think we'll
Mhm.
constantly keep coming back to. So here's how this episode is going to work. We're going to be picking up some statements that are very famous, that are being glorified, and we're going to try to look at it again from this lens of questioning. But before we get into all of that, Praneeth, again, an overarching question perhaps. How do you think Bollywood portrays love in general?
Right. So, not in a very nice lens. Well, not really. The thing is that, you see, Bollywood is just portraying what we're doing in our lives. That's what cinema does, right? It picks up from people and it takes from your life and it shows that on a bigger screen. However, definitely, while it depicts your own life on a bigger screen, it's definitely reinforcing and maybe glorifying certain parts of what we do. For example, when Kabir Singh came out, a lot of us were infuriated that, you're really glorifying a very toxic, toxic masculinity is being reinforced and glorified. And if you want to show it, but don't like make it so heroic, you know. So that's the thing. Kabir, there are a lot of Kabir Singhs. We have known them on a personal level. We've seen our friends date them, and we've seen people who have sons who turn out to be like Kabir Singh. But again, the thing is that if we glorify those things, we're not questioning the faults in that character. We're not questioning how that character became who he became, right? So when we're looking at love that is coming from cinema, because they need to sell, what they're doing, they can't cater to a lot of truth because we don't want to listen to the truth, right? We're the masters of self-deception and denial, and the filmmakers know that, they understand that, and they know that too much truth will not sit very well with people, right? That's why movies that can be very reflective in nature and very introspective may not do very well on the box office. Because, and why are the commercial movies lack depth because and liked by the masses? It's because the way, the level on which we're exercising life and we're living life is the kind of content we would want to consume as well. So it's a little bit of both. It's the cinema impacting the society and society also influencing how cinema is going to be. So Bollywood is both. It's a cause of how we're looking at love and relationships, and it's also the consequence of it's also coming from how we're practicing it already. But yeah, having said that, I think there is definitely a very glorified idea of love that we see in Bollywood. There is a happily ever after. There is, searching for each other, finding your soulmate, and then that's it. Nobody's filming anything after that, right? There is no struggle that we're filming. We're not talking about the fights that every couple face. We're not talking about how love doesn't just happen and then that's it. You need to maintain love, and how even in your happily ever after there are some very nasty fights and there are constant conflicts, and that is a part and parcel of every romantic relationship. We don't want to show that because there's nothing sexy about that. There is nothing about that that would sell, you know. So now if you see that these things are changing a tad bit, if you look at these series, Netflix and Amazon series and all of this, more younger people are doing this, and they're bringing it down to our relatability level, right? They're making shows on hostel life and your existential crisis while you're studying and you're coming from a small town to a bigger town, and the transition from college to your working life and how that takes a toll on your love life and the conflict, career or love and all of that. It's definitely showing that, but it is still working on something that we've discussed in our previous sessions, episodes, that is magical thinking, because magic sells like nothing else. So the message that Bollywood is giving out to girls in the aspect of relationships and love is that you have to keep waiting for the right man to come along, and for them to then change your life and make you so happy that you've never been happier before. I don't remember the movie, but there was one of these dialogues. Sonam Kapoor was casted in it, and she goes like, "एक लड़की को सिर्फ प्यार ही तो चाहिए, like कि उसको कोई इतना प्यार करे जितना कभी किसी ने नहीं किया." Like what is even the barometer, and how would you even really know कि किसने कभी किसी को नहीं किया उतना? And no, a girl obviously needs a lot more than that. So we're also setting the gender roles and really reducing them to only a girl only waiting for a man to come along, a person to come in their life and change that. And in homosexual uh, couples as well, one person is waiting for the other one to come, given which role are you taking up, right? And how is it like for men is that you have to be on a constant search for the right woman, and for that you have to go through woods and fight dragons and fight all these villains and really bring out your macho side. And by the end of it you will find the girl, and then you will know that this is her, she is the right one. And then that's it, then you're together and there is no story after that. The end, they say, but it's actually the beginning of a new phase of life, but nobody's talking about that. It's not the end, it's the beginning. Maybe it's just the end of a chapter one, you know so yeah, so what we're essentially wanting to question today is the glorified side of love, and we want to come down to the reality of it. Because that's why men are always seen shaking when they're on their altar, because they're thinking, is the search over? Have I settled down with the right woman? What if there is a better one out there for me? Is this really my soulmate? And for women it's like, I'm waiting for the right guy to come along, but what if this one is not right? You know, and no. And for women, it's like I've always waited for the right guy to come along, and now that he has come along, I cannot let him go. And then there is putting up with a lot of red flags, being mistreated, and all of that because I waited for so long for someone to come along. I can't actively look for a partner. I can't ever take the first step, right? Bumble is thankfully changing that for us. And I can't do all of that. So I've waited for so long. And if this goes for a toss, I'm going to have to do the waiting all over again, and then invest in again. And one of the biggest problems that we've seen is that we don't want to start all over. So I think somewhere Bollywood is also reinforcing the idea of letting go of the red flags and justifying all of that with very romanticized narratives, which we're going to talk about now.
Right, I think you've already opened up a lot of interesting ideas, be it the blind chase of the right one or the toxicity, the glorification, and so many things. So, without further ado, I think let's start with the first dialogue that I have with me. So, this dialogue is from Kal Ho Na Ho, and it says, "हम एक बार जीते हैं, एक बार मरते हैं, और प्यार भी एक ही बार करते हैं." What do you
Right.
have to say?
I think it's really funny to equate loving to living and dying. I mean, of course, you live just once, and of course, you die just once. And once you cease to live, you're dead. So it's over, right? But that's not the case with love. Love is an emotion. It's an expression. So once love is over, ऐसा नहीं that you enter a void and अब पता नहीं it's like a empty world that you're in, right? But that happens when you stop living, of course. When you're dead, well, we don't know. But this is not the ultimate ending of life and the ultimate end to you breathing and existing altogether. This is something that humans are capable of doing time and again. We are capable of loving more than one person in many different capacities, romantic or otherwise. We're capable of expressing our love more than just once. We're capable of loving even after a heartbreak. We're capable of getting back up and getting our broken, vulnerable heart ready to put itself out there yet again. So I think you can love as many times as you're open to. If you're allowing love to come to you, if you're ready to be as vulnerable as you're required to be when you love, if you're ready to risk heartbreak, if you're ready to put yourself out there and not have the love be reciprocated, then you can experience love a lot of times, right? Of course, but we need to look at why does this dialogue say this? Why does this dialogue say that you can't find love again? And why is it that we're living by this idea in our life? I see a lot of couples who walk into therapy saying that, um, but I truly love her. I truly love him. And I don't know if this will happen again. So, what's really at the foundation of it? It is the fear of uncertainty in the future, the fear of not being able to find another partner in the future that makes us want to believe that there's only one person that you will love and you can do it just once so that you know that your partner knows that. When both of you know that there's just one, there is no going away. So, whatever the equation is, you'll have to keep putting up with it, just like olden times. Go back 50 years. The divorce was not an option. If you've married your partner, you've married your partner. That's it, right? Things are changing now, but that's what. So, whatever was happening in your marriage, whether you're being hit or you're being abused or you absolutely don't talk to each other, the man goes to work, the woman is home at home taking care of everyone, and that's it. It's an economic arrangement for most part marriage. uh, so today we sort of hope for that to be the narrative because we don't want to go through the uncertainty of life. We don't want to go through the heartbreak, the failure of a relationship and go back to feeling lonely again. That's definitely one of the biggest fears of new age love. We don't want to be lonely. So, what is the quick fix to this? It is to convince yourself and your partner that there's only one person out there for you, your soulmate. So, I'm yours and you're mine. And no matter what happens here, we have to continue to stay in it. Now, one side of it is that you're so committed in your relationship that you're willing to work through it all, all the challenges, all the struggles. But this is not the place where this idea is coming from. This idea is coming from the place that no matter what the health of the relationship is, you gotta stay. Leaving is not an option because you only love once, right? And that is why a lot of people stay in what we call as one-sided love for a very long time because they fear that they won't be able to feel this ever again for anyone else.
Right. I think also quotes like these and ideas like these stop people from acknowledging and normalizing falling out of love, which is again very normal and something that happens at such a massive scale. Cheating, for that instance, like we had a whole episode talking about how it's absolutely, I mean, of course you have to communicate it to your partner, but these feelings, they are bound to come, right? So what do you have to say about that?
Yes. So the problem with this dialogue is that it is not talking about the fact that sure you love people and you love them once and then it doesn't work, and it's okay to also fall out of love. Sometimes things do not work, and sometimes you're not treated the way you thought and hoped to be treated in a relationship. And somehow we keep love above all, and we betray ourselves the most when we're in love, right? We close our eyes the most towards what's really happening, towards the red flags that our partner is coming into the relationship with, the most when we're in love. Again, we'll go back to the childhood and establish that when you're deprived of all the love and affection in the childhood, you grow up, and whenever you have to choose between the attachment that you have with your partner, the love that you have going on with them, versus if you're being honored and respected in this relationship, you will always end up betraying yourself, and you will end up choosing this affection over that because you've always been deprived of it. So you keep choosing it. So the idea, if cinema can offer us this idea, right, this perception, which I'm sure some of the movies have, that love fails, and that's all right. We need to hear more of this affirmation that love can fail, and it is not a failure of who you are, not a failure of your life, and it's not something that you cannot rise above from and experience love again in its full capacity. If you're willing to open your heart again to newer people, newer experiences out there, which is, of course, something that has to come to you with time. You don't need to force it. You can't force it. Then you will be able to experience that love all over again. You can restart and you can go back to giving yourself all those great experiences in life.
Right, absolutely. I think a key takeaway and something I'm going to write as my quote here is love can fail and that's all right. Okay. So moving on to the next dialogue that we have here, it's from Jab We Met and it says, जब कोई प्यार में होता है ना तब सही गलत नहीं होता.
Mm.
Off right, problematic, but yeah, I'm going to let you do the talking about this.
Yeah, saying जब कोई प्यार में होता है सही गलत नहीं होता is basically giving someone a free pass to do whatever the hell you want to do in a relationship because you're in love, right? So because you're in love, verbally abusing your partner is all right, physically abusing your partner is all right, sexually abusing your partner is all right. And well, okay, if these are too drastic, then disrespecting your partner is all right. And to say that because I love you, I can shout at you, and you're the only person that I can express my anger to, who else do I have? So if you're my partner, you have to put up with always the worst side of me, as well. So of course it depends on the context of this dialogue, how are you using it, but you can really use it to justify a lot of wrong, unhealthy things that are going on in a relationship, right? And this is also something that we learn in our childhood from our parents. So this is Bollywood thereby reinforcing that idea. So when we're mistreated or hit or dismissed or disrespected by our parents, what is told to us is that I'm your parent, I can do that. It's like being told that if someone loves you, and if someone, and parents are the ultimate love figures for a child, right? This is where the attachment begins from, and they represent love and caretaking for you. So if they can do whatever, however they want to treat you, and then say that I can do that because I'm your parent, so the takeaway that your child mind has is that, oh, so when you're in love and when someone is there for you, with you, if you have good days with them, then bad days can be really bad, and that's all right. And that is just what it comes with. When parents are not teaching children that you can receive care, but you also need to see that at what cost are you receiving that care. And that cost is also important to look at. You don't want to receive that love and care at any cost whatsoever. You also need to honor yourself. So a child will only learn that when a parent has exercised that with their children, and will be able to call out this idea in Bollywood if it sees it coming up. When we grow up in dysfunctional families where parents do not respect their children, and because the idea is that children are supposed to respect the elders because they're older, some weird fact. So that this is Bollywood right here, reinforcing that idea that your parents love you and they can treat you however. Similarly, your partner loves you and they can treat you however. And there is no right and wrong in a relationship, because they will really mistreat you and they might hit you or whatever today, but they will go back to loving you tomorrow. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to hold on to that idea that they loved you at the end of the day. And because they're in love with you, it's all fine, it's all valid, and they can do whatever they want to do to you. And somehow this statement is used the most when you want to get away with the unhealthy behavior in the relationship, right? Because obviously if you're conducting if you're manifesting very good conduct in a relationship, and is really are you if you're really respecting your partner, then you don't need to say that love में प्यार में कुछ सही या गलत नहीं होता. Then you don't need to establish this, because then of course you're doing things out of love. But when do you need to use this statement? When you're mistreating your partner and you want to say that I'm also doing this out of love. So that's where it gets, toxic.
But Praneeth, all of this kind of makes me think that time and again, we've always discussed that why a lot of times a lot of couples fight or end up in a very toxic situation is because we look at love as something that you just find, you click, and that's it. What you have to understand is that the partner will come with their own set of um, baggage, insecurity, their own sides that we don't appreciate, right? So in this situation, how does one really understand that, okay, this is just a part of them that is not so nice, and I don't know, maybe I have to keep up with it, or how do they understand that, okay, no, this is unhealthy and this is not something I should be keeping? There's a difference. But a lot of times when these two statements come together, it can be confusing.
Right. So this is about you expressing that to your partner. This is what the moment is about. You feel a certain way, and maybe it's not established that how you were feeling, it was not very obvious to your partner that you felt this way in the relationship, that you felt disrespected or disconnected with them when they did a certain thing. So it's about expressing and letting your partner know that this is how I felt, and this is I would like for you to take care of, and this hurts me and this triggers me, and basically sharing your love language with them. Now, if that is not received very well, and even after receiving that, if the same behavior is coming up, and there is now a longer rough patch and repetitive fights, and it's like your partner's not hearing you, they're actually not listening to you, they're hearing you, but it's not seeping in, and they're not acting on it, then you know that you are stuck in a loop. Now that's where we call it toxic, because no people are ever toxic, it's the dynamics that become toxic. You start going back into that loop. You've established it to your partner that I don't like this. They acknowledged that you felt this way and they've said sorry or whatever. But if they're going back and doing it again, then they're not really sorry. And then what you're saying is not really being received. So there is no communication. If you look at it, even after communication, there is no communication. In that case, you know that uh, something is broken. It is a broken relationship. So to be able to differentiate when is it that communication is the problem, and we just need to let each other know where we're at. And of course sometimes that takes work because we're attuned to treating ourselves and people around us in a certain way, but as long as you're taking responsibility for that behavior and asking for that time, that I understand, I see you, I feel you, I'm going to work on it, it might take some time. and we can have this arrangement. Maybe next time that I do this, you say this, or I say this, or you give me some time, or I give you some time, or something. You're working on your problem together as a couple. Versus when you know that the relationship is broken, you express something to your partner, they did not respect it, and now you're just going back to expressing it to them time and again, as a way to convince them to treat you the way you want to be treated. Now you can't convince someone to treat you a certain way. It has to come from them. And after doing that repeatedly, finally coming to a point where you're like, this is not working, and then just leaving a relationship out of exhaustion, right? Wherein actually at a very early stage in the relationship, you did establish that this isn't working, the not understanding, but then it's the fear that makes you want to hold on. The fear of losing them, the fear of being lonely, the fear of not being able to find someone else again. So, yeah, that is where the difference is. Do I want to invest and fix something because it's just a problem, or is it a broken relationship?
That's very interesting perspective on all of this. Okay, so the next quote that we have here, okay, it's again a very, very famous dialogue from Om Shanti Om. It says, कहते हैं अगर किसी चीज को दिल से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात उसे तुमसे मिलाने की कोशिश में लग जाती है. So first question, I think what our readers or what our listeners would immediately have in mind is how is this related to love?
Right. Because that's how we're waiting for our the one, right? Like we discussed that in one-sided love, the hope is that if I love you so much and I would want you with all my heart, then you will come to me. And I have so many clients who are living with this idea. It's again, what is it? It's magical thinking. To think that I like you so much, so strongly, how can you not feel the same way for me? Of course you feel the same way for me. There are so many people who are living with this illusion that this person and I have a vibe. Just because you really like them, you start seeing a vibe there between the two of you, which might not exist in the first place. So, this is magical thinking. You thinking that your feelings reflect the reality. Just because you're experiencing this very strong, you're really drawn to this person, very deep, strong feelings you're experiencing, it does not mean that they have the same thing for you. But to think, and a lot of us exercise this law of attraction, that if you really want it and if you really manifest it to the universe, it's going to come back to you, right? But then what about free will? What about choice? What about consent? What about whether or not that person is wanting you the same way? Maybe that person is manifesting to the universe that I don't want to end up with someone like this, and you're exactly like that. Then whose manifestation is going to work? Is it yours? Is it theirs? Or both of you are going to be, disappointed by the universe that, okay, why is this not working? Why am I not attracting things that I want? Well, because that's not how love works. It's not about you wanting something. You're not going out there buying a property, that I want this. Tell me how much money do I need to pay for it and get it. The house cannot say no. The house doesn't need to have consent in order to end up with you. But another person does, right? If you have certain aspirations and desires and expectations and demands from a relationship, so does the other person. And maybe they don't want to be with someone like you. Maybe they do want to be with someone like you. Maybe you're a perfectly good person, but they're looking for something else in life, right? So to think and to say that if you really deeply want someone, they would also want you back eventually, and that would also come around and it'll just work. Just stick there, hold on to it and just hang in there and it'll work. No, it'll work only if both of you are in it in the same capacity. And then of course the maintenance part of it, that it may work in the beginning and then you'll have to continue to work on it, and you'll have to continue to maintain it, do the conflict management, do the resolution of the fights, and then continue to invest in it, and that's when it will continue to stay in your life. It requires efforts. Just sitting back and magically thinking that just because I want it bad enough it'll come to me, that's not enough.
Right, I think that's a very refreshing perspective to this dialogue, and I think it just makes me think how complacent a lot of times, because these ideas are so heavily encoded in us that we don't even realize it for the longest time. Okay, so with that, let's move to the next one. It's a very cute dialogue, and but we're obviously going to discuss this question a lot. So it says, it's from Ajab Prem Ki Gajab Kahani. So the dialogue is, "तुम भी मेरा साथ दोगे, हमेशा Jenny, no complaints, no demands."
So let's scrutinize the cuteness out of it. You see, we always say unconditional love, right? Love can be unconditional. You can love someone not despite of their imperfections, but with them. And um, it doesn't go away when you look at certain ugly or bad sides of the person. That's what unconditional love is. Relationships, however, because the first character says, Kya tum bhi mera saath doge? So we're establishing there is an equation, a relationship here. Relationships don't go without expectations or demands or complaints, because you cannot be in a relationship where you're just giving and you're never ever letting the person know how you want to be treated, how you want to be reciprocated, what your love language is. Imagine walking into a relationship with zero expectations. It's even hard to imagine. How can that even be? Why? Because essentially, both of you, when you get in a relationship, you're living together in some capacity or the either on phone or on texting or in person or under the same roof. You're together, which means that you're interacting on whatever frequency, right? You are exchanging ideas, desires, conversations. So, what is happening is that both of you end up playing a role in each other's life. Now, whether that's a hookup or a casual relationship, a long term relationship, or a marriage, right? Both of you are playing a role in the other person's life. In a hookup sort of a setting, you're pleasuring each other, giving each other physical pleasure. There's still a role that you're playing in each other's life. You're enabling pleasure in their life. So let's say that the person got the pleasure from you and they did not give you the pleasure back. Of course you are um, disappointed in them and you're angry or hurt or whatever, because the the equation is that we've established that there's gonna be a transaction here, in lack of a better word. And then if you're in a relationship or you're in a whatever short-term long-term relationship, then there is more dynamic to it. Then you're involved more than on a physical level. You're emotionally also involved. So the more the dynamic, the more the expectations, the more the disappointments that definitely comes with expectations. And this idea is it's such a glorified idea out there that if you'll have expectations, you will have disappointments. So don't have expectations in the first place. But you cannot do away without expectations in a relationship. When two people are playing roles in each other's lives, expectations come with those roles. When we take up a job, what is the language that they use? That this is your profile and this is your job expectation, this is your role expectation. So you're expected to deliver something, whether that's in a job or in a relationship, right? And if you think that if I'll expect, I may get disappointed, so let me not expect. A, that is not going to go well. B, of course, you're going to be disappointed in relationships. Can we normalize getting disappointed in relationships, right? Because it is going to happen. Because we're two humans who are connecting, not robots, which means that we can't always be attuned to each other's needs and expectations. And we're bound to choose our mind, ourselves over each other, and there is bound to be conflict because we're different people. Conflict is bound to happen, and fights are bound to happen, and all of this is normal. So when the character is saying that I will always be with you without any expectations or demands, well, you're not her slave. Even a slave is to be paid. There is still an expectation involved. You're a person, you're a human being, and treat yourself self like one. You're not an object, you're not an enabler. You're coming together, both of you, and you're building something together. And of course, you want to give something and you also want to receive something.
Right, and this kind of also takes me back to the whole discussion you've had multiple times on the show about sacrifice, compromise, and just giving, 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 and self-sabotaging in that light to a point wherein you just get on that autopilot plane and don't even realize that it's become a pattern.
Absolutely. You're taking a lot from this show.
I don't know about anybody else, but I have a lot of key takeaways from this. Okay, with that, we come to the last dialogue that we want to discuss today. It's a very renowned dialogue, and I think it hits home with a lot of people. It's from Perks of Being a Wallflower, and the dialogue is, "We get the love we think we deserve."
I don't think that there is a dialogue that does more justice to the dynamic of a relationship than this. It is so true, and it's so beautifully delivered also in the movie when this student walks up to the professor and says that, why is it? And I think I want to quote the question as well, to which the answer is the statement. He says that why is it that people always end up loving the wrong people, the people who are not so right for them? And the professor answers saying that people accept the love they think they deserve, because you see that here's the whole dance of self-esteem and love, that all these good people will come our way, but because we have so much shame from the past, we carry so many triggers that constantly make us feel perpetually, we might not know it consciously, perpetually there is an underlying belief system that we have of ourselves, is that we're not good enough, I'm not very worthy, I'm not that great, I've done some awful things in the past. When we carry a lot of guilt and shame for doing what we do, or the things that we've knowingly or unknowingly have done in our life, we start to feel that I somehow my market value is less. You know, I'm not that great a product. You know, so what do we do is that all the products that are not very great, we are ready to negotiate and take a lot less money for them as an exchange, right? And that's kind of what we do in this whole thing of love, that we think that we don't have that much value. So even if someone is coming into our life and is mistreating us, let me keep that, at least I have someone. I can't expect to be treated any better because I don't deserve it. So with in that movie, what happens is that the female character that this boy is asking about, that why is she always ending up with wrong people, she carries a very low sense of herself. She carries shame because she has been abused in the past, right? And because of that, she acted out in the ways that she has had multiple relationships, got sexually very active in her life very early on in her life, so carries so much shame around that. That I'm not a nice girl, I'm not a good girl, I don't have a very good character, I'm not a very I'm not a person who is morally correct, and I'm not who good people should get in life. um, and that's why she's always ending up with people who either cheat her or mistreat her or take her for granted or whatever. It's not that people who think that they can do that and get away with doing that to her, but it is her also. First, it's her who thinks that I can be treated this way, and I will allow people to get away with treating me like that. Not because I don't understand when people are mistreating me or whatever, but because somewhere deep down, I think that I deserve this behavior. It's not very alarming or absolutely uncomfortable or bizarre for me that why would someone treat me like that, you know. But when you're not as alarmed, when you're not as uncomfortable with mistreatment, it means that you have a certain kind of familiarity with that treatment, and that may be coming from your childhood, your caregivers, your siblings, or your whoever was there in your inner circle. One, and second, from this belief system that, I mean, anyway, I'm not very good a person, so might as well just settle with whatever it is that I have. And I see this so much in my sessions. Whenever children are raised with shame, uh, they don't even know they carry this belief system where they think that they're not good enough, where they think that they're not good people. Like they have this perpetual idea of themselves that keeps coming up in their narrative about life. Okay, anyway मैं क्या उखाड़ लूंगा लाइफ में, anyway मैंने क्या कर लिया है लाइफ में, anyway I'm not a very good person, and I am obviously going to hell, and karma is going to come back and bite me. What are these statements? We're constantly ruminating on the things that we think we've done wrong, and we're constantly evaluating ourselves based on that particular thing that has happened in our life, and so we're ready to be traded for mistreatment as well. So I don't think that this statement can be any more right, where the professor says that we're always accepting the love we think we deserve. So if you're someone who's continuously falling in the trap of unhealthy toxic relationships, that's because somewhere deep down you're thinking that you don't deserve any better. So you need to cater to what is it inside of you that makes you feel that I deserve this, it's okay, I accept this. This is for me only. Cater to that belief, and you'll see that you will start having problems with that behavior, and then you will start creating boundaries only when you realize that you're worth more than this, that you don't deserve to be treated like this.
And coming full circle from where we started, just kind of takes me back to this dialogue from Dear Zindagi, Shah Rukh Khan, as the therapist says it. He says something like, "जब हम खुद को समझ लेते हैं, तब बाकी क्या सोचते हैं, क्या करते हैं, फर्क नहीं पड़ता." Right? And this is something that you've also emphasized on so many times, that it's so important to kind of become self-aware, or to get in touch with your authentic self. And I think through this entire series, that's also one thing that we've been trying to kind of almost push our viewers to kind of lean towards. So yeah, I think thank you so much for this discussion. It's been super refreshing actually. And any last message that you have for our viewers right here right now?
Well, I think just this, that we have had some very interesting, intellectually stimulating, challenging ideas that were discussed throughout these 10 episodes. I think we had some very hard conversations. We talked about some things that carry a lot of taboo and stigma with them. And I really think that this is a wonderful space that we created here. And personally, it helped me a lot. I think it was intellectually very stimulating for me to sit and think about all of these aspects of relationships from all of these angles, with some amazing questions from the community and that you put together. And I think um, we get so many messages. You get a lot of messages. I get a lot of messages where people are from all over are saying that they're resonating with what we're doing here. And I hope and I wish that um, you know uh, people who watch our episodes and who are consuming this content are able to find some substantial help from this. And we tried to make it very concrete. We try to keep it very practical, so that there are actually some genuine takeaways from it, and it's not just something that you're enjoying for the 1 hour that you're listening to this podcast. And yeah, I hope that we continue to create these spaces for our audiences out there. And yeah, just that we're very happy that so many people connected with us, so many viewers are continuously watching these podcasts and giving such valuable feedback to us. And it's really the feedback that keeps us going, that makes us want to bring on such interesting topics. And I think, yeah, in the end, I just want to say that what we're trying to do here through these podcasts is to genuinely create a space where we can bring a shift of perspective in how we approach love and relationships. Because this aspect of our life is truly the pathway to joy, and it's truly something that is going to lead to a fulfilling life. uh, we've established that time and again, that it's relationships that determine our joy, our happiness, and the longevity of our life, for that matter. And yeah, we just hope that everything that we've discussed, from being conscious in your relationships to knowing, is to noticing your shame narrative, to being able to respect yourself, honor yourself, and to not betray yourself in a relationship, and to authentically show up to your partner and communicate your deepest feelings, triggers, sorrows, expectations to them, so that we can collectively build relationships that are stronger, happier, and have more appetite to deal with conflicts and fights. And yeah, I hope that we're all able to put this to use and build our relationships stronger collectively.
Absolutely. I don't think I could have put it any better. And I think another idea I remember once we were conceptualizing this series was that there's so much content on love, relationships, mental health out there, but how much of it really is coming from credible sources? How much of it is coming from experts, from professionals who know what they're talking about? So, a big, big, big thank you to you, Praneet, for always having that kind of woke perspective, for always also humanizing that shame, that talking about things that we generally are very, very hesitant to talk about. And like you said, it's been extremely intellectually stimulating for me, for you, and I'm sure for all our listeners right here. So thank you so much to you. And of course, thank you so much to our listeners, to everybody who's tuning in, who stayed with us through all these 10 episodes. We'll be back with another season. Until then, you can please make sure that you're following Praneet Kaur on Instagram. She goes by at Pour the Heart Out, and you're following us on Instagram with Bidang India. And take care. See you with another season, hopefully very soon. This is Isha signing off for Vidayang. Bye bye.